So welcome back. We're here with Mimi and with Nadia, and we're going to continue our conversation on employee engagement and try to figure out what are some of the properties that we can actually take to design for employee engagement much more generally. So maybe just give us some perspective on what you think is key to employee engagement.
Absolutely. I think the opportunity to learn and to grow. So one of the things that really stuck out with me, what AES does, for example, is they hire generalists, which is very refreshing to hear. So often employers are looking for very niche skills. And I think looking for more generalist workforce perspective employees helps, because that allows you to hire people who have the soft skills, and then they can learn the specialized niche skills, and then that's a really great way to engage your workforce, is to have educational programs and for them to feel like they're growing. And that kind of, the article also, the AES article mentions about how we treat children like adults and adults like children, but I think that by the workforce enabling you to kind of learn all these new skills is really engaging, and it keeps your job interesting, and it switches things up, and it lets you wear many hats.
And there's this drive to comprehend that we're talking about, right? That's what you're sort of getting triggered and satisfied. It's like, okay, you can learn, you can continue to learn, right? And you mentioned that was part of how you were so excited about your manager from before, right?
Yeah, she always kind of just let me do my own thing, and if I had an idea, she would. Generally, her response would be like, run with it, but give me the financials to prove this is a good idea, and then we can pitch it to the client, which was always awesome because I kind of got to do whatever I wanted within the realm of my role. But the other way my company operated, which I really liked, which was very frustrating at the beginning, but at the end I really enjoyed, was you couldn't get promoted until you were doing the work of the role above you. So when you were finally taking on that work, whether it was independently or because your manager was having you do so, they finally realized that you were able to do the next role and you get promoted. So then your job description would be that role, probably for the first 6 months when you learn that role. And then you do the next role while you're still doing your old role. And the way they did that was to ensure that no role was A, left undefended, but B, that you were constantly learning, so that you kind of got the ropes originally of that role that you were taking on, but then you were always able to take on more responsibilities and new ideas. And so each role definitely had a set requirement of things. Your first role in the company was always super analytical. They wanted to make sure you knew how to do the basics of what clients needed and write client emails. But by the end, you were doing much more strategic thinking, which I really enjoyed, while still making sure you had the analytical skills and management skills. So they kind of piled on the new needs that they had for you, while kind of phrasing it in a learning environment, which I thought was really enjoyable because I never stopped learning.
And when you look back at the kind of learning that maybe AES does, or that you were provided with, in what way do you learn best? When do you feel like you can learn?
I'm personally a very hands-on learner. So theoretical ideas and philosophies are great. It's a great way to kind of initially absorb information, but to really learn, I feel like hands-on. Another element of
learning by doing.
Learning by doing, and then I think that's what is the differentiator when you do it at your job. And I'm very much a person that I can succeed if I'm shown how to do it, and then I do it myself. So it's like, once you hand me the tools, I'll get the hang of it. And a lot of things seem very theoretically unattainable, and then you actually do it and you realize it's not as complicated or not as tricky. And that's really empowering too, understanding that you're succeeding at something, and it wasn't as vague or mysterious as you thought the task was.
And potentially that you're allowed to fail.
Yes.
Is that possible?
I think so. And I don't think you should be scared of failing. I definitely am. As a human being, I'm such a perfectionist that I'm terrified to fail and do wrong. But I think the ability that you can kind of hang your own noose is important to leave there. And instead of micromanaging so you can never fail, it's kind of leaving it like, here are the rules, here's the task, have at it. If you need help, ask me, but if you fail, it's not the end of the world. I mean, we always used to say at the agency, like, you're not saving lives. You're making someone money. Like, so like, if it's $1 or less, but you learn something, it's important.
Okay. So interesting. That brings up this notion of psychological safety. Okay, the drive to defend.
Right.
And so if people feel like they are safe to fail, then typically you can learn better. Does that
Yeah, I would
Does
agree.
it resonate? Right. And so in many ways, the drive to defend is another piece. And we know that most of the teams that work well and teams that are engaged do allow for failure. They do allow people to sort of screw up and get help so that they feel safe enough to continue exploring and innovate and create and do things differently, right? And that's when you see that teams advance, that people advance, that they want to be in a place like that. School, oftentimes, people hate school because they are afraid.
I love school.
They are afraid. You love school.
Oh, I'd stay in school forever if it paid.
But because you learn, right?
Yeah.
Because you learn, the drive to comprehend, right? That's there. Now let's go to the other drives, the drive to acquire and the drive to bond. Any kind of ideas from your experience where that mattered?
I think
We talked about your
yeah,
manager.
I think bonding as a team though is so important. And if you have a toxic person on the team, it really disintegrates that drive and it makes work pretty miserable. We had a really toxic person on our team who ended up leaving to go to another job, and I think that, and I knew she was really toxic because she was one step above me. So while she wasn't my direct manager, she did assign a lot of tasks to me, and she loved to pawn things off and act like she was super busy. When in reality, I'm like, how are you busy? Because I'm doing all your work. And she was, when she left, that the team realized just like how freeing it was to have her leave, and the team really bonded because she had, and every office has one. She had been the person that started rumors, that really would be catty and go to your manager about something and then say to you something else, and you didn't trust anyone. So I think the ability to trust and ensure that your team has your back is so vital, and the drive to bond is such a fragile thing, because the moment one person disintegrates it is the moment you don't really want anything to do with your coworkers. And so once she left, I think as a team, the group of five of us who reported to the same manager, who were all on the same clients, really got to hang out more. We would do group lunches. Sometimes we would just go for walks in the middle of the day, frequently Starbucks runs. And it just became much more freeing, and the environment felt much more breathable. So then you were able to learn, you were able to acquire and defend, because the bond was all of a sudden built.
Right. And you felt safer then,
Yes,
right?
for
right.
sure.
So it does sort of spill over to the other drives. And you were talking about how exciting it was with Red Bull and the group cohesion there, possibly. Is that
Absolutely, yeah. So Red Bull and 5 Hour Energy, even though they seem like competitors, I joined 5 Hour Energy at a time that the energy drink was very unknown. No one really knew about the company, and then we grew to $1 billion brand within 2 to 3 years, which was unheard of. But what was really cool is that we started out as a very small team, and then we all grew together. And so that drive to bond, working really long hours, doing all sorts of crazy things that sort of startup or early stage companies do, brought us all closer together. The sense of camaraderie made us kind of push through long hours, strenuous hours. We're dealing with like a lot of objections from people who were unfamiliar with the product, and it really was a way to carry us through. And then you mentioned your manager and being close to your manager, but what brought me really close to my manager was one day we were all so exhausted. We had the longest day. I think it was the day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday. And after this, 14-hour shift, she said, you guys, why don't we just watch the movie Elf? And so we just all watched the movie Elf, and then from that moment it was almost something like magical, because I felt very connected to everyone on the team, and then I never wanted to let anyone down, but it was a very much like family environment that they were able to create through that. And
functional family?
Functional family. Functional family.
Right? And the drive to bond is so critical to us. It's like, if we don't feel good, if there is a quote unquote, technical term, students, asshole, then it does hurt the entire group, right? As you were describing. And there is a Stanford researcher, Bob Sutton, who says the no asshole rule is critical for any kind of workplace to be functional, right? And you need to actually screen for the assholes.
They hide well.
And they may hide well, and there are ways to detect them, right? And you need to screen them out, because they do damage to the drive to bond, and it affects your engagement at all kinds of levels, as you were describing, right? And then the weight is off you when that person is gone. And those people they do exist for a number of reasons, right?
Yeah.
And it's very critical that for a workplace to work well, for people to be engaged, that you're mindful of that possibility, right? In the book, I talk about the psychopath, right? Not that all of them are psychopathic, yet they don't necessarily have the same kind of drive to bond need. They can actually sort of use you easily to get their drive to acquire or their power needs fulfilled. And so they easily sort of gossip one way, the other way, etc., and make it difficult for people to trust them. And so it's very simple in a way, right? But we have the drive to acquire, the drive to bond, the drive to defend, and the drive to comprehend. If you're creating a workplace where you're mindful of that you want to create a safe space for people, that you want to create a space where people can achieve what they want to achieve, right? They can perform. They can, at the same time, be friends with each other, right? Not forcefully, not networking style, not instrumentally, but like, okay, I can connect to you on a human level. That sets energies free. That engages people because we're fundamentally human and we connect on that level.
Right.
And if we can get room to grow and learn, that's exciting. That's when our brain is fully engaged, right? So students, designing a workplace for engagement is not super hard, and it's not easy. And we see that many places in the United States and across the globe aren't able to do so. Now, we also know that good managers, like you were describing, Mimi, are able to do so. So I encourage you to think about that more because you could just be that kind of good manager, okay? And I don't think this is an either born or a learned thing. It is something that you can all do one way or the other, with the styles that you have, with the personality that you have. Being aware of these foundational principles of the 4Drive model. Thank you.